All right, guys. Still learning the.
All right, guys.
And I'm just making sure it's working. So it is. But I am back. I initially started and have to restart because my kids are on summer vacation. They were being a little crazy. But now we're here. We're good to go. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about the week ahead in the markets. And I'm going to get my screen shared. We're going to jump right in. If you have questions, just go ahead and throw those in the chat. I'll check periodically to see what questions that you guys have and answer those if you do. So please feel free to do that. And this is always a little bit of a challenge for me to get this shared. And I'm making sure that we can see it. Let me double check. All right, we're good. All right, so welcome to a market review preview here. Courage pays better than fear trading. Very excited to have you guys here with me. I'm doing these weekly now to get everybody set up for the week ahead in the markets. And in doing the chart study this weekend, things look set up for continuation higher. The charts look pretty bullish, and we'll look through those here today. And in terms of data this week, we have a quiet Monday and Tuesday. But keep in mind that the United States and China are meeting on Monday in London to discuss the potential trade deal. So if anything comes out of that in terms of progress, you know that the markets will get a move out of that. So just be mindful of any kind of breaking news. You've seen how things can swing very, very fast, if there is progress announced. So that's happening Monday. But in terms of big data, we really don't have much going on Monday and Tuesday. It's really Wednesday where things are going to pick up and get exciting because, as you could see, we're going to get CPI, Consumer Price Index. So we're going to get an idea of where inflation is. And then on Thursday, we're going to get the Producer Price Index. So we're going to get PPI. So those are going to be two big market movers. They're going to give definite volatility, inject volatility into the markets, and we need to be prepared for them. And then on Friday, we're going to get preliminary Michigan consumer sentiment. So those are the three key data points that we're watching. In terms of earnings this week, Oracle is going to report on Wednesday. And being affiliated with the AI space, you could see a subsequent move in the chip sector off of that. And on Thursday, we get Adobe. And I put together two videos. If you haven't had a chance to check those out, just kind of previewing potentially what could happen with earnings, please do that. And really, the following week is going to be the big week. And just to give you a preview, we are going to get the Fed interest rate decision. We're going to get the dot plot, which is going to be huge. And then we get Jerome Powell's presser. So that is going to be a massive week. So just in terms of the news and how I'm looking at things, I think tomorrow we could have a nice continuation day, a nice push higher. I wouldn't even be surprised to see a gap up tomorrow morning across the board on the broader markets. Tuesday, I can anticipate some chop because we're getting big data Wednesday. And then based on the data that comes in Wednesday, that's going to dictate how we move. So, like I said, the one thing that we want to be prepared for and aware of is the China-U.S. discussions and what comes out of that. So just make sure you're, monitoring the news lines to see if any type of progress is made in those talks. That's a look at the data, and let's dive in and begin looking at the broader markets. And before we do that, being that the only thing that is open right now is Bitcoin, we could just take a look at the BTC chart and see that we're looking a bit green right now. I'm just going to hop over here to the 3-minute chart. You could see that we're back up into the 106,000 range. And really, we've had a nice push since Friday. It's been climbing. You had a little bit of a dip here early this morning, but not significant. And it's been pushing higher. So potentially this is a preview of what's going to happen in the broader markets. We know that Bitcoin hit that all-time high just a few weeks ago, checking in on the daily, you could see that we did get back above that 10-day exponential moving average. And what I'm watching is I just have this little trend line on here, just as some upper overhead resistance that I'd like to see it break to give some confidence that it can push back up to new all-time highs. But it's good to see that it is getting a push here this weekend, and that could be promising in terms of what we're looking at tomorrow. Futures are going to open here in about an hour and 21 minutes, so we'll see where we start there. But Bitcoin is looking decent. And let's just jump over to the SPX. Let's go through the broader markets. And I really like the SPX chart here. I was posting about this earlier today. We did get above this upper trend line resistance. Last weekend when I put together the live stream, I was talking about how this does look like a double top, but I wasn't buying it. And I referenced this pattern over here that we had when we were near all-time highs, how it pushed out of there before it pulled back. And I think we're going to do the same here. The volume has stayed pretty steady, pretty consistent for the bulls. You haven't seen too much of a fall off. You've seen buyers still stepping in here. And just looking at the volume profile, you could see that there's quite a bit of activity taking place up in this range. So the buyers are not scared off yet. And when we're looking at the RSI, we could see that we're not overbought at this point. So there's still room for this to push higher. And just hopping over here to the weekly chart, strong weekly candle that we had last week. And can we push higher? We're going to need a little bit more of a catalyst. And really, if you look at the past 4 weeks, it's kind of been in a range. So we haven't had that real breakout since this gap up that we had here the week of May 5th. So maybe this is sideways movement. Tomorrow we get that nice gap up and we push up into new all-time highs. Again, I'm still being very cautious when it comes to longer-term swing trades just because of the volatility that's out there in the markets, but I do like how the chart looks here on the SPX. Qs look nice. I mean, continue to push. Again, looking here at the volume profile, again, you do have some nice activity sitting right here. Really, we've just been moving kind of sideways. Inside candle, remember when we see those inside candles, that tells us that pressure is building and potentially we could get another push. And really just looking at the Mag 7 and big tech, all the charts look set up to continue to move higher. And so with the Qs here and looking at the setup that came in on Friday with this inside candle, again, I would not be surprised to see a gap up happen tomorrow morning. So keep an eye on big tech. Coming over to IWM, that inverted head and shoulders that I talked about last weekend, we broke above that neckline. That's a nice little candle that came in here, hammerish candle. And if it could pierce through that 50 SMA on the weekly and that 200 on the daily, you've got plenty of room back up to all-time highs. But you're going to need some confidence in terms of rate cuts or some type of easing of rates, or even if it doesn't happen in June, that the Fed is hinting that they're coming sooner rather than later. And that could give a spark to IWM or some type of news related to deregulation. So keep an eye on IWM because that pattern is now in effect. We did break above that neckline and that looks pretty solid. The Dow Jones Industrial DIA, similar type of pattern here, inverted head and shoulders. Again, nothing in the way of this guy up to 451.72. So there can be some room for this one to run. And then just taking a look at the VIX, we could see that we dropped quite significantly on Friday. And we actually came down and found some support here on the 100 SMA on the weekly, which we haven't been that low in volatility in quite some time. You'd have to go back into February when we were hitting those all-time highs. And if we're going to push up to all-time highs, you're going to see this weekly 100 get broken and we'll head down lower, because remember, a lower VIX is good for equities. Interestingly enough, that even though the VIX is down, when we look at the 10-year Treasury, that had a decent size pop here on Friday. So that pushed up 4.508%. And so you really don't want to see that 10-year up like that, because that's going to put downward pressure on stocks. So definitely watching the 10-year to see what it does this week. But that was a pretty strong move for it, which was kind of interesting, being that the VIX had taken a tumble. And then just a few others wanted to take a look at. TLT, I haven't looked at this chart in quite some time, but we are nearly down to all-time lows, and this looks like it's bear flagging to me. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this continue to head lower on TLT. And then finally, taking a look at the dollar index here, you do have a bit of a double bottom coming in, but this has been down for quite some time, so pretty interesting. But just in terms of overall on the broader markets, things look primed to continue to move. That's what I'm anticipating. That's what I'm expecting. And when you look further into some of the individual tickers and charts, which we're going to do here in a few minutes, you can see that the setups are there. Now, some things are overextended. There's really no setup there, but there are others that there looks to be some opportunity. So we'll take a look at that here in one moment. So I'm just checking to make sure there's nothing in the chat yet. All right, I don't see anything in the chat. Okay, so we're just going to keep on rolling through here. So I'm going to start with Broadcom, and I put together a video last week just in terms of what this thing could do off of earnings. I had a bullish target of 280, 203. And a bearish target of 230, 230. Neither of those hit. But heading into this earnings report, we had all the nonsense going on between Musk and Trump. The sentiment was a bit weak. As a result of that, there was some negativity, and it just wasn't the right environment for it to push. And so, my call for it to go higher didn't work out. I'd actually purchased a handful of call options on this to play an upside move, because I thought that it would run. I thought that the sentiment was enough there for that to happen, but it didn't. So that one's a loss for me. However, I still do like where this chart is. It got saved right here on the 10-day exponential moving average, and I'm watching to see what it does here. And I believe it was CrowdStrike. Let me come back, go take a look at CrowdStrike real fast. It was either CrowdStrike or Salesforce. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here in a second. Yeah, so with CrowdStrike had this huge gap down, but you could see it found support off of that 20 and then began to recover, and it filled that gap. So the reason why I'm referencing that CrowdStrike chart is because I wouldn't be surprised to see something similar to that here on Broadcom, because again, there was a lot of positive sentiment coming into this. They actually had a really good report. It's just when companies are doing as well as they are, they have to be almost flawless in their report, and market makers didn't like their forecast. They thought it could have been better. They thought the beat could have been a little bit better, but it wasn't. And so they got punished a bit. But I like this one to recover in due time. And also, too, so I didn't just lose on calls on this one. I actually lost on a day trade on this one on Friday, too. So just to put it out there, because, again, trading is not all wins. So this was a double loser for me on this one. And I think I saw a comment come in here. I want to make sure I get that one. So Daryl says, do you think, are you referring to Broadcom, Daryl? Yeah, I do. Again, it's just been so strong. And if we go back to where it was in December, it had this huge move off of earnings. And we're really just back. We're back at that price area that we were in December. So this little bit of a retest here, we're just coming back down, retesting into those old all-time highs. And I think if things really get moving again this week, let's say that we have a catalyst or we have a deal with a deal between the U.S. and China, I think you'll see the entire chip sector take off. And this one obviously needed to cool off. And actually heading into earnings, the obvious play was to look short, because it was, I mean, you could see how overbought that it was on the RSI. I just went with the contrarian approach here, but I do think there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm around this company. So I do think it'll get bought up and we'll move higher before it's all said and done. Now I don't think that will continue, because I do think a larger dip's going to come in, but I think in the short term, probably through the end of June, this will get bought up. All right, so just continuing on here, Microsoft made its new all-time high. It eclipsed that 468 area from July of last year. So it's nice to see Microsoft put in that new all-time high. Interesting candle here on the daily at a resistance at an all-time high. That's a shooting star candle. And so you have selling pressure here. Now, whether that's just profit taking or we're going to see a reversal, we don't know, but just keep an eye on Microsoft to see what happens here. It's been so strong, and it's always fun to see a company hit an all-time high. So it's one of my favorite things to do when I get to adjust my line here. I'm like, oh, cool, all-time high. And then if you're Netflix, you just make an all-time high every day. So let me go back to Broadcom real fast too, and I want to hop over to the weekly chart, because speaking of shooting star candles, look at this on the weekly here on Broadcom. Right. And I mean, you could argue that this is a double top pattern, and that's one heck of a shooting star. That's one heck of a candle. So I forgot to point that out there, but I thought that was interesting. Hopping over here to NVIDIA, I have this price range marked out because the resistance, the bears that are in this range are just strong. And anytime, you can see here, we're on the daily. Anytime they push the price up into this area, they just get smacked back down. So NVIDIA is going to need some type of catalyst, and maybe it is a China-US deal, because there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of chip imports, exports, all those things. So that could be something that they're waiting for, but it's got to break this area if it's going to move. And if you hop over to the weekly, you could see this even better. So, but really just kind of sideways movement on NVIDIA since last June. So keep an eye on NVIDIA. I don't think it's done yet. The trade desk, we talked about a few weeks ago how you had a bit of a bull flag here, and I thought we were starting to get a push on this one. And I think on the hourly, was it the hourly? Let me go to the chart. It was looking like we were getting some type of a inverted head and shoulders, and we were going to start to push, but that didn't play out. And we sold off on news that Amazon was taking a large market share in the space that the trade desk is part of, and was taking a lot of its customers. So that's why you saw the sell down that happened on Thursday. And so what we need to watch here is, are we going to get down and fill this earnings gap? I don't think that would happen. That's $10 away, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a test down into this 50 EMA on the daily and then get a push out of there. I don't think this move's done on the trade desk by any means, but some support has to come in here pretty soon, because it is looking a bit tired after that pop off of earnings. And so you could see here too, all these rejections that are taking place when we look at the weekly chart, and then coming over to the monthly, same thing. There's resistance up in that price area between 80.63 down to 74. So we just want to see how it's going to interact in that price range. Circle Internet Group. This is a new IPO that kicked off this week, CRCL. This one just ran from $64. At one point, it got up to $123.59. Keep an eye on this one. The IPOs can run pretty hard when they come out. So this has been a fun one to watch. I haven't traded it yet. It's too new for me. You can see we only have 2 candles, but that's been fun. SoundHound, I actually really like this chart. This is 2 weeks in a row. I've kind of liked what's been presented here, but we closed above that 10-day exponential moving average. I do like the bullish volume that's come in here, and we are making higher lows. And so I don't think this will be a massive move, but I could see a nice little quick day trade up here to the 100. And that's a little over 60 cents, but with enough shares, that could be a decent profit. And then if it could somehow break that 100, again, there's quite a bit of room, meaning lots of it, because there's no moving averages above it in order for it to run. So I am watching Soundhound this week for a potential day trade. Robinhood, a little bit of disappointment there because they did not get added to the S&P 500. If you go over to the 3-minute chart, we could see what happened post-market when it was discovered that no additions were being made, and this thing dropped about $11, but it did pop there up to $80, but then dropped. It will eventually get added, but you might see some weakness come in on Robinhood to start Monday. So just keep an eye on that. If you're looking for a trade, there might be an opportunity short here on Hood. Apple, this is another chart I continue to like. I liked it last week. There were some good plays that I had on this one that made me feel not too bad about myself, considering my Broadcom losses. But we have the I think it's the WWDC, and I think that's the Worldwide Developers Conference for Apple that's going to take place this week. Last year when they had it, it sold off on the event, and then following the event, it got bought back up, and Apple had a pretty strong move. Let me just show you that chart. And the reason why I know that is because, let me see, it's like right in here. No, like right in here. Yeah. The reason why I know that is because I had call options that I bought and I sold here on this day, this big green day, but I sold way too early. And look how big this candle is. And for Apple, Apple's not a huge mover, but let me measure this thing out to show you guys. That was a $13 move for Apple. That's huge. And then you could see the next day pushed even higher, retested, and went back up. So this is a case where I just got out too quick. So could we see something similar like that this week on Apple following this conference? Potentially. So keep an eye on that. But I do like this chart, and I really like this on a weekly. This is just wedging. And again, there's good support here. It's being held in this price area, so we could potentially see a gap out of here if something is revealed in this conference. So keep an eye on Apple. Definitely watching it this week. Roku's another one. We talked about this one last week. A nice double bottom pattern. We were making higher lows, and this is a beautiful candle here. No moving averages above us. Up here to this 200 on a weekly. Keep an eye on Roku. When it has big days, it can move $8 to $10 if you get a lot of buyers stepping in here. And what I'd be watching is when we get up to this pivot area, about 82.27, how does it interact there? And can we come back up and test the most recent highs that it had here, 105.04 off of its February earnings report? And crazy enough, I mean, the all-time high on Roku, $492. Insane. So keep an eye on Roku, like this chart. Palantir, have no fear. Palantir is here. Inside candle play. Kind of like Netflix, Palantir just puts in all-time high after all-time high. But I do like this inside candle setup here. Are we going to get a pop? Potentially, I wouldn't be surprised. Again, I'm seeing a lot of things that could indicate that there's a gap up tomorrow. Again, all things considered, one news event could dump everything, but the charts, at least from a technical perspective, look pretty ripe with opportunities. So pay attention to that inside candle on Palantir. HIMS, I'm watching this candle that we put in here on June 3rd, and I have it marked out because more than likely what I see happening until some type of catalyst comes in on this one is just chopping inside this range. It looks like this is a strong support that's going to hold, and it has for quite some time. So once we break out of this, either to the upside or the downside, I'm not sure how much opportunity will be here, but that's kind of what I'm looking at here on HIMS. Tesla, oh man, inside candle here on Tesla. They have the robo taxi event this week, I believe. Let me see. I'm pretty sure that is, I think it's Wednesday or Thursday. But what can happen here? Again, we're sitting on that 50 simple moving average on the daily, and we have the weekly simple moving average here, 50. So that's kind of its saving grace right now. But what I pointed out to my community members in the charting today, there is this tiny, tiny unfilled gap that if you go back to, what is this, April 22nd, where it gapped up, we know that gaps like to be filled. This would be a significant drop for it to come back down here to 242, and you have just a stack of moving averages, 50 on the monthly, 100 and 200 weekly. And if it would break through that, you'd get some panic. I think this gap would be filled, and then some buyers would come in. But for me, with Tesla right now, there's just too much uncertainty and volatility for me to even want to try to take this long. And even though there can be some great opportunities here, it's Tesla. I don't think it's going to die, right? I mean, you have one of the greatest minds of our generation here. I just think in the short term, you could see some more weakness come in. And I might miss it. I might miss the move, but for me, I want to see this settle a little bit. And I think we probably have a little bit more weakness to go. So, but there's good support down here. And again, if we would come down here to these moving averages, potentially we'd see a bounce. Or if this gap gets filled, if we crush through these, look for this gap to get filled and maybe see a bounce. But for me, I don't want to touch this in terms of adding to my long-term investments until if it would come back down here to this 200 range, which it might not, but I'm not touching this one from a swing trading, day trading perspective right now. So that's just me. There's a lot of times I will trade Tesla, but right now is not one of them. All right, Coinbase inside candle here. We're above the majority of the moving averages. We did close below that 10. Kind of an inverted head and shoulders pattern. I was talking about last weekend how we're making lower highs. We want to, if coin wants to continue to push, it's got to break out of this structure and pattern and at least take out this most recent high and then challenge the highs that we put in back in December. The all-time high on this one is 429. So there's quite a lot of room for this to go. But if Bitcoin can have a nice day or continue to put in some more strength, we could see some a bit of a sympathy play here with Coinbase. So definitely going to be watching that. And again, I do love inside candles because it is indicative of pressure that's building on the charts. APLD, man, I jumped. This is like a trend for me here recently. I jumped out of this one too early. I think I got in. I tried to ride this one. I think it was Monday off of the news of their partnership with CoreWeave and snagged the profit. I was like, I'm good. Got out, and then it just. I mean, you could see what happened here. So, is this a reversal candle? Is this a shooting star? Is it going to dump from here? I don't know. But nice fun move here on APLD. Overbought on the RSI. Really good move. Google, really like this chart. And this thing has been beat up for quite some time, but it got above all of its moving averages here. I was going to try to set up a trade. I was trading with Paula. I don't know if Paula's on here with me now, but I took the trade on Broadcom over this Google one. And I'm sad that I did. But again, it's above all of its moving averages, and it's got space to go. Very thin volume on the VRVP. So this one has been a bit of a laggard. Maybe we could see some push come in here. I'm actually going to move this one up to the top of my list as one I want to watch because I do think there's some good opportunity. And I really like this weekly chart. We're cutting into this wick from the previous week. And if we look at this, I guess you could call this almost like a shooting star candle here, even though it's not up near a top or a resistance. But I do like how we're closing above some of those upper wicks. So maybe you can get a squeeze out of there and push push some of those bears. Continuing to go through here, UNH. I'm still sticking to my cheapskate plan here of 188. And again, are we bear flagging here, right? For another drop lower? Maybe, maybe not. Again, I know a lot of people who are in this one, and for all of your sake, I hope this thing just rips and I never get a chance to get into it. And what I'd be looking for is can that gap get filled up to 377 off some type of catalyst or news here. But we'll see how this plays out, and I'll update this one next week as well. Look at this move on Roblox, guys. Let me go over to the weekly. Look at that. I love green candles. I'm a bull. Like, I try to be as objective as possible, but I do love looking at bullish charts. This chart just looks amazing, and it's just putting in green week after green week after green week, and it's not too far away from its all-time high. Am I going to chase this one and play it? No, because it is very extended, but this one has been fun to watch. In terms of when would I potentially take a chance on it? Well, let's see if it can come back and retest that 10 or the 20 and maybe look for a long from there. But man, the place to get in would have been down here off of this little retracement into the 10, but I didn't do it. But man, congrats to anybody who's in Roblox right now. And then let's just hit a few more. So Meta's been on a nice little bit of a tear, pushing nearly back up to all-time highs. Amazon, again, this is a nice little chart too, above all of its moving averages. And, the all-time high up here, what is that, 242.64. Thin volume, at least up to 222. Maybe Amazon gets a bit of a move next week, but I do like how this chart is looking as well. Celsius finally got a close above that 200 on the weekly. It's been a while since that has happened. Let's see the last time it closed above that 200 on the weekly. We'd have to go back to August of last year. So now that it has gotten above, you could see all this price action that was coming in here. Buyers were showing us that this is an area of interest, of support. And so let's see if it pushes up here into this August 2023 low. If it gets a little bit of rejection, comes down and retests that price area again, and then starts to push. And that next significant area of resistance will be that 49.40. That's the 100 on the weekly. So nice. This could be a nice setup on Celsius. Going to be watching that one. Like I said, Netflix. Netflix is the Chris Carter of stocks. Chris Carter, the former wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. The joke was all he does is catch touchdown passes. All Netflix does is make all-time highs. So, I mean, this thing it doesn't stop. But this earnings report I'm going to be watching for a split, and I have on here Jackie, one of our great students. We were talking about that, so we have that mark to watch to see if we get a 10-to-1 split there on Netflix, and potentially can that be a catalyst for a drop on Netflix? Who knows? Maybe to be worth a flyer on just buying some puts, the next all-time high that Netflix makes, and see if you could profit off some downside there. Marathon Digital Holdings. This inverted head and shoulders hasn't played out yet, but it's looking like it's set up. I like this uptick in volume here. We're above the 10. It still has a lot of moving averages, but this thing is due. It hasn't done anything for quite some time. So let's see what it did last summer. Let's see here. Here's May into June. So June really was a nothing burger. It did get a pop into July. So I guess not a ton of movement, but this thing hasn't done anything. My battery's dying and I'm outside. I'm not plugged in. So I'm going to kind of rush through these last. ExxonMobil, I said last week I was looking for a retest of that 200 on the weekly for a bounce to push out of there. It got close and it started pushing back up. We're above the 10. So we'll see if oil can get a bid. And then interestingly enough, on SMCI, inside candle, so pressure's building there, and AMD, inside candle, pressure building. So I am watching the chip stocks rather closely this week because potentially there could be some moves. And then Carvana, I know Jason has a swing on Carvana. He's been crushing this stock, all-time high up at 376.26. Man, this one can do some damage. We're overbought on the daily, but on the weekly we are not. So there could be a little bit more room to the upside here. I'm not touching this one, but like I said, Jason has been crushing this. So I like to, just check in on this one every once in a while. And let me see if there's anything else I want to look at. I think that's it. So I'll take one or two more questions and hop off here because I don't want my computer to die. And I did not bring a charger out here with me. So anybody have any questions, anything they want me to look at quickly? I see the educator in me. I'm giving wait time. Monster. Yep. Or I don't know why I said monster. MSTR. Sorry. That's what always comes in my head when I see MSTR. I know it's on here. Hold on. I haven't updated that chart in quite some time. Let me see. MSTR. Here we go. So my lines are going to be off here. All right. Let me adjust my lines. Yeah. So this one, I mean, after that huge move that it had off of Bitcoin hitting 100,000 back in December and January, it's hasn't done much. Now we have reclaimed some of that price action here as of late. And right now, I mean, this little bit of a double top that came in, we had a drop. It looks like it's finding support here off of this 50-day exponential moving average. So, I'm seeing a little bit of a volume gap here that could maybe bring us down to that 347. But you also have that 50-day simple moving average here at 354. So if it is going to come down, I would look for, you definitely have support here, and then potentially it could bounce out of here. But it's good. It should move with Bitcoin. Let's see what Bitcoin's going to do, if it's going to push and if that's enough to carry it. But it looks like it could move higher. I would just look maybe for it to retest a bit before doing that. But again, it's probably going to depend on Bitcoin. And then BBAI, man, I haven't updated this chart in forever. Yeah, so this one has fallen quite a bit here since February, but we are making higher lows. So you are seeing interest tick up on this one. You're seeing the volume tick up on this one. Quite a bit of interest here and support. And really, you just have that 100-day simple moving average in its way that if it could break it, it could get moving. And you could see that you don't have a ton of volume here on the VRVP. So it could be a clear path. So I actually like that. I'm glad that you asked me to look at that chart. And let me see what it looks like on the weekly real fast. Yeah, I would keep an eye on this one. And maybe just taking a flyer for a potential swing trade here on this one. And we'll update this one again. We'll check on it next week to see if it can get a push and get above that 100. But if it can get above that 100, then it does have some room to move. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me here for the live stream. I really appreciate it. I love doing this stuff. I love answering your questions. Your support of the channel means a lot. So any comments, likes, subscribing, sharing with your friends and family does mean a lot. If I can help you with anything, just comment on one of the videos with your question, or if you have a video you'd like me to make, I'll put it together for you. I'm actually working on one for someone who asked me for some tips just on general investing. So I'm doing that. Or if you want to connect with me, email me, couragepaysbetter@gmail.com, and I'll see you back here. So I do this weekly. So typically on Sundays, I do the weekly market review and preview. So, and it's typically in the evenings. So come back next week. All right, guys, have a wonderful day. Check out the rest of the channel. Reach out to me. Let's connect. Let me help you in some way. And I will see you next weekend. Take care, everyone.